Oh, this just feels so good and so right and so nice and so soft and just so... Hey, Kasey, what you doing? Nothing? Welcome to the Rowdy.com Big Three, sitting alongside Buck Fever. No comment on the wardrobe or the lack of shaving. I'm Bass Masters. We're talking NASCAR racing, and we should really start, don't you think, with these two fine gentlemen?
Absolutely. Kasey Kahne and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Obviously, Kasey needs someplace to go next year. Does it make sense for him to go to the 88 and Jr. to go elsewhere?
I can't believe you guys are saying. I can't. But by the same token, as much as I'm sitting here saying there's no way, it's ridiculous. Junior is a mint. He makes all this money for Hendrick Motorsports. I never saw him going there either. So maybe he actually ends up like at Richard Childress or something.
The question wasn't whether it's going to happen. The question was whether it makes sense. Now, if you listened to the Rowdy podcast last week,
it makes sense for Kasey.
You heard Reed Spencer of the Sporting News talk about why maybe the Hendrick organization doesn't suit Dale Earnhardt Jr. And for the first time, I started to understand that maybe drivers and organizations just don't work together sometimes. Look at Jamie McMurray as a perfect case in point. How could you not succeed at Roush?
How
Especially through 2008 when they were such a great team and Carl Edwards is winning 9 races.
And David Ragan was doing well.
But you go to Ganassi and you're confident and it just suits you better. So I think whereas Kasey Kahne needs a place to run next year, he's not going to be able to be under contract to Rick Hendrick as he is now and race for some other team. NASCAR's been pretty clear about that behind the scenes, thanks to Joe Gibbs. So I just think it does actually make sense. Now, if you're asking me, is it actually going to happen? I have a hard time putting it all together just because what Junior and Rick Hendrick have said.
But Junior might want to...
What else would they say until it's a done?
Junior might want to do this just because he's running so crappily. He might get to the point where a change in venue is what he needs.
Maybe.
If you reach the chase and Dale Jr. still running like hell and he's not in the chase, then at some point,
but where does
where's his head at? Because I think he's the guy that ultimately makes the decision, at least right now, to pull the plug.
And where does he go?
Richard Childress would be the obvious
place.
place.
How about Ganassi?
Or Joe Gibbs.
Well,
anywhere but Hendrick.
Speaking of running crappily, let's talk a little bit about David Ragan. Jeff Smith of Roush Fenway Racing came out and said he fully expects both David Ragan and UPS to be back in 2011.
Well, I think UPS is under contract.
He would know.
And he has an option on Ragan.
Yeah, he left himself some wiggle room, though.
He did leave himself some wiggle room, but I think that the question becomes, as always in these situations, what is the alternative? What is the alternative? Who's the guy you're going to put in the 6th car now that, say, Kevin Harvick is off the market?
Dale Earnhardt Jr.?
If I'm UPS...
You see him in brown?
If I'm UPS, I'm really upset. I'm frustrated with FedEx, and I really, really want my mojo back. But I guess, what is the alternative at this point?
That's the question. What would you do if it weren't David Ragan? You're under contract to Roush. Which guy do you want to get? Which guy would you like to have in his place? Matt Kenseth. Well, I mean...
Then what do you do with Crown Royal?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I'm UPS.
Well, you know what? That's an interesting point. There's, depending on the sponsorship situation of the other 3 guys who are all performing better than David is right now. So...
Issue number 3, everybody was sort of focused on whether or not Chip Ganassi could win the Indianapolis 500 and the Coke 600 in the same day. He came 1 position short of doing so, but what I read this morning is he is the first owner in history to win the Indianapolis 500 and the Daytona 500 in the same season.
Pretty awesome.
Pretty amazing. And this just in, Chip Ganassi is the open wheel stud. I mean, he really is. And now that he's got his other stud, Jamie McMurray, back in the stable winning a Daytona 500, maybe he can start making a little bit more noise in NASCAR and really make some historical moves, because he just did.
Juan Pablo Montoya has been fast, and the last 5 races, I don't know if this has to do with the spoiler and Jamie feeling a little more comfortable with it or not, but 3 second-place finishes in the last 5 races for the 1 car. And those guys are actually on fire.
They really
and almost quietly on fire. Chip Ganassi, he did well with Sterling Marlin, had some good years in there, and then just really slipped badly and has figured out a way to come back. We've seen other owners do this, and what's the thing we say about these guys when they do it? They're racers. Well, I guess Chip Ganassi's a racer. That's a pretty high compliment. So I'm impressed. It's never been done before, so it must be pretty hard to do.
Sitting here thinking, would Martin Truex or Jamie McMurray perform better? We probably thought Martin Truex would, but look at Jamie. He's really torn it up in that car.
He's done well and a threat to make the chase. The other thing I wondered might happen, before Juan Pablo spun out, could a sponsor win the 500, the Indy 500 and the Coke 600 in the same day, because Target won the Indy 500.
Yeah.
You know, and that would have been
God.
pretty interesting to see,
That would be
too.
cool.
All
That'd
right,
be
that's
very
been your Rowdy.com Big 3 for today. Do join us at Rowdy.com. Got a great podcast today. Rick Mass is on there. Got some new music from Pop Echo Records.
Yep.
Thank you for the shirt. Our boys up north of the border there, so we appreciate that. And we'll be here all week long.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.